On this edition of Commuter Connections, we've got need-to-know information about MDOT MTA's dedicated bus lanes and why you as a motorist should avoid them. One of our region's largest events, Artscape, is right around the corner. We'll show you why MDOT MTA is the best ride to the event and to the annual July 4th celebration. A special guest is visiting our studio, Professor Verne. He's here giving us a behind-the-scenes look into his exciting and unique segment that you see on Commuter Connections. And we'll introduce you to a bus operator who loves sharing Baltimore's history with his riders. All on this edition of Commuter Connections. In an effort to improve bus reliability throughout the city, MDOT MTA implemented dedicated bus lanes throughout Baltimore. The red painted lanes are mainly for transit buses, and any cars caught in the lanes will be fined. Joining us with more on the dedicated bus lanes and their importance is MDOT MTA Deputy Administrator and Chief Planning, Programming, and Engineering Officer, Holly Arnold. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And could you tell us what's the purpose of the dedicated bus lanes?
So the purpose of the dedicated bus lanes is to improve travel time, reliability for our buses. Through Baltimore Link, we implemented these. We did the planning, design, and installation of bus lanes throughout downtown Baltimore. We want to remove the buses from auto traffic so that they can avoid the delays and congestions that people sitting in auto traffic are. It also allows us to prioritize person throughput rather than vehicle throughput on the lanes.
And how many are there throughout the city?
So there are 9 different streets that have painted lanes, and that equates to about 5.5 miles throughout downtown Baltimore.
And they're marked in red, so most people should be able to see them. So what is allowed in them and what's not?
So they're marked in red. There are some that are not, that are just part-times, but they're signed, so you always just follow the street traffic signs. Buses and transit vehicles are allowed in the lane, so that includes MTA buses and the Tri-City Circulator. Bicycles are allowed in the lane, so we're also prioritizing people on bicycles. And emergency vehicles can also use them if they need to avoid traffic.
And how should drivers kind of navigate the area knowing that those dedicated bus lanes are there?
So basically just stay out of the lane is the biggest thing. Follow the signs that are posted. There are some areas of the lanes where you can get in to make a right turn. So the lanes you'll kind of notice are like hatched in those areas, so it will alternate from the concrete to painted red. So in those spots you can get in to make the right-hand turn and then get back out of the lane.
And what's the fine for those cars that are caught in the bus lanes?
So Baltimore City recently changed their charter to allow for a fine of $250 if you're caught in the bus lane.
And in February, the agency actually did a study on kind of how these bike lanes have helped the city or not. And could you tell me just what were some of the top findings?
Yeah, so we did that study. We looked at it before and after of how the buses had performed before and after the study. And we just determined that there were improvements in travel time in 79% of the bus lanes during peak periods. The travel time savings range from about 4.7% on Baltimore Street to almost 32% on Hillen Street and Guilford Avenue. And it was an average of about 9.3% throughout the entire city. So it was a huge improvement for our buses.
And it also got some data on the bus-involved crashes. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
It did. So it was kind of a side effect that we weren't anticipating, but the buses on those streets were involved in 12% less crashes than they were before. I think the biggest thing there is that there's less opportunity for buses to interact with cars, so therefore less opportunity for crashes to happen. So it's a huge safety benefit for our customers as well.
And this is a big study for you guys. Can you tell me how the information was gathered for it?
The before and the after actually data came from our automated passenger counting system. So that's a GPS unit that's on our buses that is location specific and measures when the doors are open. So we were able to use that data from the before and after to analyze and see when the buses were moving and how quickly they were moving throughout the corridors. We also looked at the general travel time. So we wanted to see if the dedicated lanes impacted the experience that people in cars were having. And there was really no noticeable impact. There we used technicians to drive the corridor, making sure we're focused on like peak periods and normal days.
And throughout the past few years that they've been here, how has MTA really been getting the word out to people about these dedicated bus lanes?
Yes, we've done a lot of outreach. Before we implemented them in the fall of 2016, we had a public meeting. In the fall of 2016, winter of 2017, we did a lot of public outreach to downtown businesses. We had a dedicated person who kind of went to all of the businesses along the corridor to get their feedback and get more information to them. We changed some of the lanes based on the feedback that we got. And we also have leaflets that we handed out to Baltimore City traffic enforcement officers, Baltimore City Police, and MTA's police. So anyone who was caught in the lane, it was information about what was going on with the lanes and that they would be served with a fine. So there was a lot of warnings early on, and now they've been in place long enough that people are getting tickets instead.
And could you tell me where viewers can find more information on these dedicated bus lanes right now?
So right now, if you go to MTA's website at mta.maryland.gov, you can see information about the lanes, including the dedicated lanes report with the before and after.
Thanks for joining us, Holly. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up next, we'll introduce you to a bus operator who makes a ride on his bus a history lesson. That's next. There's one special MTA bus operator who gives his best and more. He takes the average transit ride and turns it into a Baltimore history lesson. Let's take a look at a trip, or should I say class, with operator Juarez Lee Shelton.
Straight ahead of us and to the left is the B&O Railroad Museum. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was the very first organized passenger carrier railroad in the United States. As the name suggests, it carried people from the East Coast, Baltimore, to the Midwest, Ohio. If you look one block over, you will see the famous Baltimore Basilica. Baltimore Basilica is a national landmark as it was the first Roman Catholic cathedral constructed in the United States. Members of the Roman Catholic faith were indeed a persecuted minority in this country before the American Revolution, and in some places afterwards as well. This is the end of the 80 line. Directly down President Street, about 4 blocks, is the Baltimore Civil War Museum. One specific fact about Baltimore and the Civil War that most Americans have no idea of. 1861, General Benjamin Butler arrived here under orders to secure the city. Secure the city, and that was it. However, once he arrived under the cover of darkness and in the midst of a fierce thunderstorm, he took his troops atop a Federal Hill. Once there, he established a massive fortification armed with about 70 cannons aimed all around the hill, pointing at all directions of the city. The purpose of this was two. First, to keep Baltimore, and obviously by the same token, the state of Maryland in the Union, and to dilute the massive amount of pro-Confederate sympathy in this city. Both objectives were accomplished by Butler's fortress, and there is a lone cannon on Federal Hill to this day which testifies to that great period.
Now let's welcome to the show bus operator Juarez Lee Shelton. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here in the studio.
It's very much appreciated.
And so how long have you been a bus operator for MTA?
Almost 10 years now.
10 years. And have you been giving history lessons the whole time?
Practically, yes, practically.
And tell me how those are created. How do you, on a day-to-day, figure it out?
History lessons are born most often in the course of simple conversations. You'd be talking to patrons about the state of their neighborhoods, the state of their city government, and so forth and so on. And of course, everything has a past. And so you then, as a historian, you fall onto how things were at one time in contrast to how they are now.
And when did your love for history begin? Because you have a bachelor's in history as well.
My love of history began probably when I was in grade school.
And what would you say is the biggest thing that people are surprised about when they get your history lesson? I know the first one was probably people were like, what is he doing? So could you tell me how it felt?
Well, of course, when people receive my history lessons, I always drop, specifically Baltimore history. You drop the bomb that Baltimore is the first location where bloodshed happened for the American Civil War. The first thing you get, oh, really? I thought it was, Fort Sumter. No, it was right here, right on Pratt Street.
What do you enjoy the most about just driving the bus?
I'm a huge people person. Interacting with people is an essential for me. There's no way I could do anything where I was totally closed off from people. So interacting with people, teaching people, expanding minds is what I love to do.
And what are some of your favorite history facts that you have told other people that have, I know you talked about the war, but what's some other ones that made people so excited to hear? Or just say, I've never known that before?
When you tell them such things as Baltimore was the place where the first gas lights appeared in the United States. We were the nation's second largest city after New York until Philadelphia eclipsed us and we became number 2. Maryland had the highest number of free African Americans of any state prior to the Civil War. The Civil War is an area I devote a lot of research to.
I see.
a lot of my info comes from the 19th century United States.
So what route can people catch you on or catch these lessons?
You could catch me presently on Route 80. I have one of the 2 all-night services.
And you were in school while you were also with MTA, correct?
Oh my gosh, yes.
How big of a challenge was that for you to not only complete your bachelor's, but also your master's and also still be with us?
Oh, not a challenge at all. I have been a working student ever since I started college. I'd had interruptions several times, but I'd always found ways to balance work and school so that I not only finished, but did very well in the process.
So what's next for you? What's next in your career? What else would you like to pursue?
Long and short-term goal is to become an adjunct professor at a local college, university. A PhD may be in my future. We'll see how the wind blows with that. And to continue teaching when and wherever I can.
Well, you definitely have the knowledge, and you definitely took me to class today. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And coming up next, MDOT has a game plan for getting you to one of the most popular events of the year, Artscape. Stay with us. One of our region's highly anticipated annual events, Artscape, is just about a month away. Thousands are expected to attend, and MTA has the perfect way for you to get to all of the fun and excitement. Joining me with more on this event is Tracy Baskerville of the Baltimore Office of Promotion and Arts. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Artscape, huge event. We're so excited about it. Tell us when it's going to happen this year.
So Artscape takes place July 19th, 20th, and 21st. So it's always the 3rd weekend in July. It's a great celebration of the visual, performing arts, and also culinary arts, a little bit in there as well.
Anything new happening this year that you may want to tell us about?
We do. We have lots of new things. Our theme this year is Discover. So that Saturday of Artscape, July 20th, is the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. So in order to celebrate that, we're just thinking discover. Discover new things. Discover new things about the arts. So when you come to Artscape, try and do something you haven't done in years past. So with that in mind, we're taking our Charles Street route and we're really highlighting our artist market. So this is where the heart and soul of Artscape are the artists who are producing work every day. So this is a chance to go to their booth, visit vendors and actually buy their artwork. So we're putting them front and center along Charles Street. So that's new, first thing new this year.
And paint a picture for me about what people will see when they actually go. It's a couple of days. Just give us an idea of what people will be able to see.
So when you come to Artscape, first thing you notice, it's a great sense of community there. This event has been around a long time. So just to see all the people. So you'll hear music going on. You'll see lots of food vendors. We'll have the artists. And then we'll have some things inside as well, like the BSO is doing a presentation, so you can go into the Meyerhoff. And then also we like to have things for kids. So we have Kidscape. We also have Teenscape as well, because Artscape is a theme. And then also for teens, for youngsters, for adults, Gamescape.
Gamescape, tell me a little bit about that.
Gamescape has been around for the last few years, and what it is, we bring the art of video gaming. So you think about just how those video games come to be. And so that's, career path. So we definitely get a lot of teenagers, but we get a lot of adults in there to really find out how to get into the career with games.
And how did this great event even start? How did it come about?
This will be the 38th year of Artscape. So many years ago, it was started by the Mayor's Advisory on Art and Culture. And so they really wanted to spotlight all of the artists that are in the area, whether performing, whether it's visual. And then our office, the Baltimore Office of Promotion of the Arts, took over the event about 2003. And so we've been trying to keep that commitment to celebrate the artists.
And entertainment, a huge part of the weekend. Could you tell me just who are the big entertainers that will be there?
Everyone who comes, definitely, they're big and awesome. But our headliners on Friday would be SWV, so a great ladies group, we definitely like them. Sunday we have the English Beat, and then Saturday we're using that, going back to the theme of discover, to discover maybe a group, a local group, regional group that you hadn't had a chance to see before. So that's the main stage, but we also have two other stages of outdoor entertainment. So we have the Johns Hopkins University Station North stage and the Morgan State University Festival stage. So lots of entertainment outdoors.
And how many people usually attend each year?
We know based on our survey from a few years ago, over the course of the 3 days, we get about 350,000 people. So we usually expect that, but of course it can be weather dependent. We know it is in July, right in the middle of the summer, but we do always hope for good weather.
And M.MTA is a great way to get there. So can you tell me how people can get there through our modes?
It's a great way to get there because the MTA light rail link stops right in the middle of the festival. And actually this year we're starting a little bit below Mount Royal Avenue, so just south of the MTA light rail track. So it stops right there, and then also not too far away is the MTA Metro link, so you can, within walking distance of the festival, is the subway. So you have great choices to get there.
That's awesome. And could you tell me how much does it cost?
The great thing about Artscape is that it's free.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that gets a whole lot more people out, of course, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, Baltimore is a great city. There are, still fun things to do, especially in the middle of summer. There's so many festivals, activities going on, and this is one of the best free events to come to.
So could you tell me how people can learn more about Artscape?
The best way to find out about Artscape is to visit our website, artscape.org, and also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Artscape.
Sounds great. Look forward to this year's event.
Thank you.
Thank you. And coming up next, a familiar face on this show steps away from his lab to join us in the studio for a behind-the-scenes look at how his segment comes to life every month. We'll be joined by Professor Verne next. Every month on Commuter Connections, Professor Verne brings the laughs, experiments, and most of all, in-depth information about our transit system.
Professor Verne, what do you got for us this time?
What we have here is a basic railway with 2 blocks and a colored signal located at the entrance of Block 2.
Professor Verne, you make this so easy to understand.
That's my job, Administrator.
Right now in our studio, we have the man behind the segment, MTA Chief Engineer Verne Hartsock. He's giving us a behind-the-scenes look at his Commuter Connections segment. Welcome to the show, Verne.
Thank you, Brittany. It's a pleasure to be here.
And could you tell me just how you and the administrator, Kevin Quinn, put together the show?
The administrator, Kevin Quinn, told me that he wanted to add another segment to Commuter Connections that explained transit technology in a way that everybody could understand. He wanted me to do the show because he felt I was effective at explaining technical topics in layman's terms. Before I was an engineer, I was a technical instructor.
So how did you create the character Professor Verne?
I was asked to create a character that was highly intelligent, geeky, funny, and somewhat eccentric. This would be an MTA employee that Kevin would rely on for a variety of technical duties. Since the audience needed to consider the show as factual, I felt that the character needed to convey a kind of wisdom and a high level of scientific knowledge, so I made him a professor. I chose the lab coat and the eyeglasses for the costume because I felt it established credibility of the professor. I created his geeky persona by adding a pocket protector to the costume, and I also write and deliver his lines in a way that accentuates his geeky nature.
All right, and could you tell me what was one of your favorite segments that you all have done, and explain it to me. What did you explain to us?
I'd say it's the episode we did on how transit signal priority works.
So how does TSP work?
Great question, Administrator. The intersection uses its TSP radio to broadcast what I call a TSP request. Because in that show, I got to explain how traffic signal work. Now, I think this demonstrates the potential of the show because we took a commonplace technology that everyone relies on, but few people understand, and I think we explained it quite well. I received a lot of positive feedback from that episode.
And where is Professor Verne created? Many people may not know exactly where you guys are when you are in the lab.
I needed a highly technical environment for use as a set. So I chose the Metro Electronic Technician, or ET shop, because as you can see on screen, it has laboratory benches and a variety of highly visual instrumentation, such as oscilloscopes and spectrum analyzers. I felt that location would add authenticity and quality to the show.
You also have many special guests, MTA employees. Tell me their significance to the segment.
I felt by showcasing our professionals in their jobs that this would inspire people to pursue similar careers, as well as the higher level education needed to attain those goals.
And what's next for Professor Verne?
We have some very interesting episodes coming up. We have grade crossings, railway interlockings, energy capture and storage, and environmental preservation, to name a few. We're also going to explore some transit topics such as how bus schedules are made, and also look for a new reoccurring character in the show that I think will add another dimension of novelty and humor to the episodes.
Oh, I can't wait to see that one. So what do you feel is the most interesting aspect of you all putting together the segment, or when it actually comes to life? What's the most interesting part of it?
Each episode opens with the professor tinkering with some highly advanced fictional technology. I write that into the show to promote the professor's credibility. I make the props as visually effective as possible to gather the attention of the audience. I find the most interesting part is to explore how far out and exotic the professor's technical interests might go. And I also think it's important to showcase that although Kevin appreciates the technical wizardry of the professor, he only sees its value and where it brings credibility to mass transit.
And it's informative, but also hilarious. How do you put in that funny side, but also keep the information as robust as it is?
Yes, I felt that humor was a critical ingredient to keep the show appealing.
Whoa! Professor Verne, what happened to my coffee?
Oh, I must have had it set too high. Oh well, you know what they say, too much coffee is no good.
I should have known that would happen.
When you make people laugh, they enjoy that experience, and I think that can help cultivate fans from among the audience. Although I've written a lot of technical manuals and training materials, I find that writing comedy requires a completely different focus. One approach I take is to explore and reveal big differences between the characters of the professor and Kevin, then find humor in their reaction to those differences.
And is that probably maybe one of the most challenging parts of the show, or are there other parts of the segment that are just challenging?
Well, it's a challenge to take a highly technical subject, such as railway signaling, and write it into a 5-minute dialogue that conveys the essence of how it works. And to write all this in layman's terms, that's a challenge.
And how important is it that you do these type of segments for people who may not understand signaling or the bus schedules, or just any person who rides MTA all of the time?
I feel that the attractiveness of the visual wizardry of the show will appeal to people and generate motivation toward trying to obtain similar careers in science and technology, and of course the education and the higher level education needed to attain those.
And do you offer any thoughts on if people can suggest shows, or how do you guys come up with the topics?
The topics are selected by Kevin, either from my recommendation or from his own ideas, but we're always welcome to explore topics of interest for the show.
Well, thank you so much, Verne. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time in the lab.
My pleasure, Brittany. Thank you.
And just ahead, we've got information on the best way that you can get to the big July 4th fireworks celebration at Baltimore's Inner Harbor. That's next. On July 4th, Baltimore's Inner Harbor will be filled with people for the big fireworks extravaganza. If you are planning to go, how will you be getting there? MTA Acting Deputy Director of the Operations Control Center, Jonathan Newsom, joins us with all the information you'll need for avoiding traffic and parking issues on the 4th. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
So this is a huge event for our area. What is the best MTA mode to take to get to the fireworks?
The best MTA mode to take, we believe, would be Light Rail Link. Light Rail Link operates on the north end from Hunt Valley to Glen Burnie and BWI Airport on the south end, with several stops in the downtown area. Convention Center stop would be the stop that we definitely recommend for patrons to use, as that is just a short few blocks away from the Inner Harbor and the festivities.
But I know other modes are able to get there as well. Could you tell us about the other one?
Sure. Local and CityLink bus routes, there are quite a few that service the downtown area, and also Metro Subway Link, where the Charles Center stop is just a few short blocks as well away from the Inner Harbor.
And for those taking transit, how much will it cost?
The base fare is $1.90 for one way and $4.40 for an all-day pass, which gives you unlimited rides on all of our core services within a 24-hour period.
And how many people do you expect to actually take transit that day?
We expect in the thousands that will utilize our services on that day. Yes, in the thousands.
And since it's in the thousands, a large number, will there be any additional services?
Yes, we will provide additional services, as well as we will be adding additional train cars to our Metro Subway Link and Light Rail Link fleets to accommodate the large numbers on that day.
And how long does it take for you all to plan something like this? You do so many events throughout the year.
That is correct. We do accommodate passengers to so many events throughout the year, Artscape, Baltimore Ravens games, to name a few. So we do a lot of advanced planning to make sure we provide the best services possible.
And where can viewers get information about all of this information that you're telling us now?
Of course, social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, but also most importantly, the M.MTA website, www.mta.maryland.gov, or they can call 410-539-5000 to get additional information.
And the event is running later than most would. And could you tell us just people who stay in the city, what's the options for getting home?
Well, our services, core services like Rail Link and Metro Subway Link, will operate approximately 1 hour after the conclusion of the Inner Harbor fireworks display to accommodate patrons.
Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
And that brings us to the end of another edition of Commuter Connections. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.